Well, hello everyone. This is Fadi, and today we are going to start a new video series that will deal with the claim that there are many references related to the existence of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, in the 7th century. As you know, in the past we have done a number of video series related to the fact, are we talking about the same Muhammad of Islam according to the traditional narrative? Or are we dealing with someone completely different? For instance, we did something with Brother Mel, we did something with also Dr. J. Smith, and we uncovered a lot of information that deal with the title. The title is Muhammad, for instance, and in other episodes we pointed out to the fact that these are references to Christ himself, and the list can go on and on and on. Obviously, our Muslim friends always will come back with these claims that we, as Muslims, they say, have supporting evidence that Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, according to the traditional narrative, is the Muhammad who lived in Mecca, who lived in Medina, who received his prophethood at the year 610 AD, who died basically at the year 632 AD, and the list can go on and on and on. With me here to start this video series to debunk these claims about a 7th century Muhammad, or a person by the name Muhammad, is no other than our dear brother, Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, welcome back, of course, and this is going to be an exciting video series.
Yeah, and this has to be done, and that's why it's fascinating, because we have been shutting down Muhammad right through this series, looking at the name, looking at the title, trying to find any reference to him. Because if he is historical, and they claim he was a man who was born, they claim, in 570, started receiving revelation there in Mecca between 610 and then, of course, 622, he moved up to Medina, and that he dies there in Medina in 632. So from 570 to 632, that period of time, there should be lots of references to him. There should be lots of manuscripts. He's a caliph. He controls all of the area from Tabuk in the north all the way down to Yemen in the south, far over to the east up to where is Riyadh today. That is a large swath of land. He was the caliph. We know certainly from 624 up until 632, the last 8 years of his life. So there should be some reference to him. Maybe coins. We looked at the coins. You can't find any reference to him. We looked for manuscripts. Couldn't find any manuscript reference for him. We looked for documentary references to him on rock inscriptions. Couldn't find any material whatsoever.
We couldn't find any in the 7th century. That's what you're saying.
7th century.
Yeah.
This time period, 570 to 632, and especially the last 8 years when he was in power. He controlled all that area. And we do know that anybody who's a caliph, they mint coins to give their name, to show their face, to announce themselves to the people that they are their subjects. So that was a curiosity in and of itself. And we pretty much shut down any notion that there was a man that far south who is named Muhammad. Far south meaning in the Hijaz, where Mecca and Medina are, that western part.
The traditional narrative.
The traditional narrative. Yeah. Now, the comeback has always been, and it makes sense, because the Muslims need to respond. And so the comeback has always been, wait a minute. There is a lot of references to him in the 7th century. We have him all over the place. Thomas the Presbyter talks about him. The Bishop Sabaeus talks about him. We do know that John of Damascus refers to him. Mm-hmm. So these are references that they're coming back with, and they're saying these are 7th century and 8th century. John of Damascus would be 8th century. But these are references to his name. And they've come up with 16 references that they claim are him. Well, obviously, we then need to look at those references. So what we're going to do in this series, because we need to kind of come back, this is part of the peer review. And when we get out and we say something, we put it out there. In the past, we used to always do it by writing articles or writing books. Now we have YouTube, and YouTube is much quicker. We can look and we say what we're doing. We put it up immediately. We're going to get a response just by looking at the comments at the bottom. And we are getting responses. And that's the great thing about YouTube, because you get that peer review immediately. And because we're getting peer reviewed, because people are trying to respond, and they have to respond, because if you can't find this guy who is the leader, who is the one who created Islam, who is the one that received the Qur'an, who is the model for all of Islam, if you can't find him, then you've got a problem. because that takes away, shuts down, and eradicates any notion that Islam can be dependent on him. The same way with Jesus Christ. Listen, the same thing was asked of Jesus back in the 1800s. People like, you have the Tübingen School or Westhausen. They're in Germany, especially the Germans, were attacking his historicity. They were saying there is nobody named Jesus Christ from the 2nd century. We don't even know of a place called Nazareth, Bethlehem, where he was born. That did exist, but we can't find any reference to him in the 1st century. We cannot trust Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. We don't even know whether or not they wrote what they wrote. So this was an attack that was hitting us in the 1800s. By the 1900s, it decimated the church. By 1905, in Europe, the church was eradicated because these attacks, these very good historical claims started permeating from the universities into the seminaries, and then from the seminaries down to the churches, and there into the pews. And people just stopped coming to church because if you can't find Jesus, Christianity is pretty much bereft of its founder and also bereft of everything we know. If Jesus did not die and rise on the cross, if he was not God incarnate on earth, then we're all damned. And you can see why people just left the church in their thousands, their millions. And the church has never recovered because of that attack. Now, along with Darwinianism, those two simultaneously really decimated the church. By 1905, in Europe, the church has not recovered. It has in America, it has in other parts of the world, especially in Asia and in Africa. And the reason it's recovered is because we as Christians decided we needed to find this Jesus. We needed to go and see where he was. And so we have found all kinds of references outside of the gospel accounts, outside of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We've had reference after reference from historians in the 1st century regarding the crucifixion. We have Thallus and Phlegon, these two Greek satirists who are debating his death there in 52 AD. That's just 20 years from his death. 20 years later, they're already debating that death. And they were mentioning that on the day he died, that the earth shook and the sun went dark. We have Josephus, who is a Jewish historian by the beginning of the 2nd century, writing in Rome. He not only mentions Jesus' death, he mentions the brother of Jesus, the death of James, and also, curiously, he mentions that the Christians believe that he rose from the dead. The only non-biblical reference we have to the resurrection. We have Tacitus. Tacitus is probably the best resort we can go to because Tacitus actually hated Christians. He was hostile. He had nothing good to say about Christianity, yet he not only mentions that Jesus died, he mentions when it happened. And he said it happened during the time of Pontius Pilate under the authority of Tiberius. That's why we know it's in 33 AD. So we've gone back as Christians and shown the historicity for Jesus Christ, shown that he did die on the cross, shown that he did live. And because we have done that as Christians, we have passed that test with Jesus Christ. We now demand the same thing of Islam. And that's only fair. And because we have passed the test, we are the best in the world, best placed to do that because we understand how powerful a response that is, how powerful an argument that is. If we could not prove that Jesus lived and died in the 1st century, and we could not do that even using hostile evidence outside the gospel accounts, because people aren't going to trust the gospel accounts because they're biased. We use hostile accounts to support Jesus' existence, to support his life, to support his death, and in some cases, even to support his resurrection. If we have been able to do that in the last 100 years, then we're demanding the same thing of Islam. That's nothing.
And we're talking historical criticism here.
We're talking about historical criticism.
Right.
We're talking about looking for the source. And the sources we use for Christianity, we went outside of our traditions to find that source.
And that's the way you can prove something. You don't want to be a bias and use your own sources. You want to go outside of that.
That's what we're asking of Islam. So we as Christians are the first to ask this because we already have passed that test with Jesus Christ. Any ism, any philosophy or theology or any religious group that makes historical claims, of which they all do, every religion makes a claim about their founders. This man lived at this place, or this woman lived at this place, doing these things at that time. Those are historical claims. They have to therefore support those historical claims. We have already done that, and we're the only ones that have done that. Remember, we're the only ones that there has been source criticism thrown against our scriptures, redacted criticism thrown against our scriptures. We've had the whole thing with historical critical analysis of whether or not Jesus even existed or not. We've had textual criticism thrown against the gospel accounts that support and deny or deny the events that happened in the 1st century. Now we're asking those same type of critical analysis against this man, Muhammad, because he is a man that is a historical claim that Islam has made, that he lived at this time, did these things at that place. So the place, the man, the book, and the time. That's all we're looking at. The place, the time, in the book, and the event. We're looking at those 4 areas, and we're asking that of Islam. Now, the comeback has been, we do have the man, we do have the place, and we do have the right time. So what we're going to do in this series is take every one of those 16 claims, and there are 16 claims, and we're going to debunk every one of them. Debunk every one of them.
Wonderful.
But we're going to debunk them by using 7th century evidence.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you for pointing that out. Just one more thing before we close. You mentioned that we are looking for outside information, outside data, outside evidence that in this case support the existence of the 7th century Islamic prophet by the name Muhammad.
And why do we do that?
And because it's important to bring credibility about that character if indeed that person did exist according to the Islamic teaching.
Okay, but the reason we're doing that is that everything up to date, everything we know about this man Muhammad does not come from the 7th century.
That's the thing. But what I want to say, in my case, when I left Islam, guess what convinced me that what the Bible taught about Jesus is true? The Quran made references to things that existed about Jesus. And that was an external document, technically speaking. So Islam, in my case, supported the fact that I am on the right track to follow the Savior.
Okay. Just remember, and just as this is for people who are watching, remember, it's Islam that says that Muhammad lived in the 7th century, but Islam that makes the claim. Where did they make that claim? They make it in Ibn Hisham. They make it in Al-Waqidi. They make it with Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, Tirmidhi, Al-Tabari. These are the claims that they make. These are the ones they're used to. These are the only ones that they can use to support that man at that place doing the things at that time. Notice that every one of those names that I've just listed come from the 9th, 10th, and the 11th century. And we're in the next series, we're going to even debunk that and show that none of those claims come from the 9th, 10th, 11th century. They don't even begin to appear until the 10th, 11th, 12th, going up until the 19th century. Ooh, But that's for another series. That's yet to come. Wait till you see what we now know about the extant manuscripts for every one of these claims.
Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you, everyone. So now you know this series has to do with debunking any external evidence that is used to claim that the Muhammad of Islam did indeed exist in the 7th century. Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you, everyone. This is Al-Fadi. God bless. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And ring the bell so you will be notified when we release new content. Our mission is to reach Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and help Christians engage with their Muslim neighbors. If you want to join us in this life-changing work, please support us on patreon.com/CIRA International or just click on the link below.